wisdom, and this is going to be a video response to OathBoundSecret. She has a video titled Pagan, Witch, or Wiccan. I just finished watching it a few minutes ago, and I wanted to do a video response and share my thoughts and insights. I have also had this same sort of conversation with people offline as well as online, trying to get an understanding of what the difference between pagan, witch, or Wiccan is. And I agree almost completely with what Annika said. I only have a little bit of differences in how I view things, although she and I get to the same place. And then I was going to also answer the question where she asked, how can you draw the line between eclectic Wicca and the more traditional Wicca, or when something shifts from being an eclectic Wiccan belief or tradition to a more eclectic pagan or an eclectic witch. So let me start with saying I agree with Annika in how paganism is very much an umbrella term, and witch and Wiccan or Wicca follow under that, like in the bubble. I agree with that, and I agree that witch falls into that as well. I guess I do agree with the fact that Wiccan also falls under witch. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And I guess the only difference I have is that Annika views Wicca as a practice, where I view witchcraft as a practice, and I view Wicca as my religion, my spirituality, sort of my life. I live my life in Wicca. It's not something I do, it's something I live. And I understand that she was saying Wicca is a practice more, but really when I describe it, I describe witchcraft as my practice. I describe Wicca as my spirituality, and witchcraft is something that comes from Wicca. It's something I do. It's the vehicle that I take my beliefs and my morals and my spirituality, and through witchcraft I apply it in the mundane or in the physical realm. It is a practice for me. Although I do understand that some individuals are witches, traditional witches, and that is their spirituality. I totally understand, and I get that as well. For me, I guess it just gets more specific, where I practice or I live or I believe the Wicca way, path, whatever you want to call it. I agree with her when she says that all witches are not Wiccan and all Wiccans aren't witches, but generally when I get into more a little bit later, I'll explain why I feel that all Wiccans are witches. But again, we're splitting hairs here. Are all witches pagan? For me, in my definition, I would say yes. However, I do, and I have met some witches who really do not identify with the word pagan, and they consider themselves Christian witches or satanic witches, and they don't feel that pagan really identifies them. So then I have to follow their label that they've adopted and, you know, agree that in their case, they are not pagan. But if I were to just make a generalization, I would say that all witches are pagan and all Wiccans are pagan. I would say that. But again, those are generalizations, and not everybody fits my definitions. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is Annika was sort of asking, where do you draw the line between traditional Wicca or a more eclectic, and how do you know when eclectic Wicca is no longer Wicca and it's more of an eclectic pagan path? For me, I've come up with some points that I use to sort of identify the core of Wicca, because I do identify as an eclectic Wiccan. I do not, I guess for me, when I look at Wicca and I say that's traditional Wicca, I generally look at Gardnerian Wicca and Alexandrian Wicca as very traditional Wiccan or Wicca, very traditional Wicca. But that does not mean that you cannot be eclectic and still be Wiccan. So where is that line? These are sort of the core beliefs that I have, I guess, come up with to help me decide if I stray from these points, then I feel that perhaps my practice is no longer a Wiccan practice. Now, just because I come up with these does not mean they're steadfast rules. It's something that I've come up with because, let me explain why I came up with them. I have an eclectic coven. I am High Priestess of an eclectic coven. We are 7. We were larger until some differences of opinions came up, and we needed to establish exactly what Annika is saying. Where is that line when your foundation is no longer Wiccan and it's more something else? So we needed to come up with a list of things, core beliefs, that we feel is what we determine as this is Wicca, and if you cross off too many on this list, then perhaps you have to look at where you're coming from, and perhaps Wicca is not your foundation. Okay. The first one is that there is a belief that the divine, the all, the creator, is connected to and is part of all living things, and that this creator or this divine is manifested through all living things. So that's the first sort of tenet. The second is that all life is sacred. All acts of love and pleasure are sacred. There is some belief in reincarnation, some sort of way that there is reincarnation, a belief in that. There is a belief in polarity, in that the divine and everything is manifested in polarity, a masculine and feminine, a light and dark, a positive and negative, a proactive and a receptive, and that there is a balance that the universe or we are trying to sort of maintain a balance, and that's sort of what keeps the universe moving to try to find this balance. But the basis is that there is a belief in polarity. There's a belief in the law of return. There is a belief that every action has a reaction, and when you cause or you are responsible for these actions and these reactions, even if it's not what you anticipated, but you take responsibility for this. There is a belief that our words hold power. There is a belief that there is, there's respect for those who have wisdom and have attained wisdom, and that we understand that in a coven, and I understand that this is in the coven setting, that once we've attained wisdom, that when we are asked, we accept that we will be passing this wisdom on so that others will carry on this wisdom. There is a following of the reed. There is interpretation in this, but there is a general following of the reed in an interpretation. Some form of harm none, but again, there's interpretation, and I don't want to get into that right now. There's an observation of all sabbats and esbats through some sort of ritual, and again, ritual is determined by the individual. And then there is a practice of magic. There is a belief and there is a practice of magic. And that's where that witches, that, you know, all Wiccans are witches come in, where I tend to agree with that. So, like I said, if you go through this list, and if we are looking at something and trying to determine whether this practice is Wiccan based or not, is it eclectic Wiccan Wicca, or is it something like eclectic paganism? If you go through this list, and my feeling is you cross off almost all of them, then I would say you are not have a foundation in Wicca, so then it's not an eclectic belief, eclectic Wicca. I know Annika had something about being sky-clad, and I know in traditional Wicca that is a big thing, but I don't feel that is something that either makes something Wiccan or not. I don't know, but that's just my feelings. So that's my thoughts, and take it for what it is. I don't know. But anyways, I love you, Annika, and I love you all. Mwah.